The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Second Book. The Letter of BELICENA VILLCA. 56th Day. The terrible Inquisitor was Ricardo of Tarsis. He was married with a sweet lady, who was granddaughter of the Earl of Tarsival. In other words, she was his second niece. From that union, had born Leto of Tarsis, in 1502, to whom the father thought to reserve as his successor in the task of exterminating Spaniard Gaulois and Jews. With that purpose, since he was little, he submitted him to a rigorous instruction, in many Dominican convents, and in the Faculty of Theology in the University of Salamanca. There, he graduated as Bachelor and Doctor of Laws, at the 17 years, and incorporating immediately to the tribunal of the Inquisition. During his time in the university, the young Leto had given proofs of a clear intelligence that guided him even to surpass the one of his own professors, but, as he was also noble and humble, such virtue far to produce the resentment of his peers and superiors, it caused general admiration. What was most impressive for all was his prodigious capacity to assimilate the most disparate languages. Apart from the Latin and Greek, and the Spanish dialects as the Castilian, Catalan, and Basque, he spoke fluently in Arab, Portuguese, French, and German. In 1522, Ricardo comprehended that such predisposition for the knowledge had to be guided. He sent him to Tours, with the men of stone for the initiation in the Hyperborean wisdom. The Noyos had restituted the Virgin of the Grotto in the private chapel of the Seigneurial house, although the child of stone lagged from his right hand, strangely mutilated in the night of the bleach. Leto of Tarsis, who was telling that the men of stone were experiencing the deepest transmutation in the house of Tarsis, he used to pass all his free time in the chapel, penetrating as nobody in the mystery of the uncuted life, and of Pyrene's caliber death. When he received the Hyperborean initiation, now with the assistance of the Veronic sign, T-robing Wibir, he warned to men of stone that apart from the deposit of the seed of the child of stone in his heart, the Virgin had revealed an inner star, a green star that could arrive whenever he wanted. Taking an intimate spiritual path, and situating himself in such star, the ancient lithic signs of the White Atlantean had no secrets for him. I was, he said, like climbing to the peak of a mountain, and contemplate a vast contextual landscape that unveiled the strategic meaning of the megalithic constructions. And with the lost wisdom, in the inner star, he had refound his beloved in the origin, who was waiting for him since his lost and fall, beyond Hell and Paradise, to return with him, to the homeland of the uncuted spirit. Undoubtedly, Leto of Tarsis possessed the second grade of the Hyperborean initiation. It means, he was a Hyperborean pontiff, a constructor of stone, capable to build a bridge between the created and the uncreated. In the house of Tarsis, appeared the suspicion that they in presence of the initiate who was announced by Captain Kiev, the one who would see the lithic sign of Katragar in the stone of Venus. Such presumption began to be affirmed, when Leto of Tarsis manifested his vocation for the Novena, and decided to take the guard of the wise sword. In 1525, without any difficulty, he entered in the secret cavern, and remained there for 5 years, in companion of the two Noyos, who were there since many years before. The initiatic capacities of the Noyo Leto, when developing intensely, during the years that lasted his retirement, process that became more accelerated, when the image started to emerge from the stone, that is, near to the 4th year of guard. Initially blurred, months later the stamp of a megalithic scene appeared over the stone of Venus. The image communicated him, also in various occasions, some words that his entire philological power not achieved to interpret, even if was evident the presence of numerous Indo-European roots. The words were Apachikajittamiruna, Apachikajittamiruna, Priwaka Voltingguananchan and Chanwayingiri, Pukarathasi. And here is what the image represented. At the distance, a mountain ranges without vegetation was appreciated. Of them, 2 stood out, due to its slopes formed a deep aperture in the midst of the figure, from where was seen a trickle that watered a likewise arid valley. But these elements constituted the background. What really dominated the scene was a knoll of gently gradient, whereon flattened crest was erected, an enormous menhir black color, surrounded by a circle of 8 menhirs of smaller size. And that was all, except from the minor details. The blue sky, only tarnished by some nebulous clouds, and the floor where the menhirs were places, composed by a reddish-brown ground, from where sprouted something low and thorny pastures. The mystery of such immutable vision was turning clearer, with the pass of time, and at the ends of 1529, Leto of Tarsus had already formed a general idea of its meaning. Dreams and telepathic messages gave him the complementary information that he needed. According to his conviction, the stone of Venus was revealing them such place situated in a far and unknown land, which Captain Kiev has mentioned. A land that existed beyond the Occidental Sea, added now the messages of the gods, and that could not be other than the recently discovered America. The menhirs had been placed, by the White Atlantans, through a special technique that turned the area invulnerable, before the possible attacks of the White Fraternity agents. In the liberated area, as in the secret cavern, the men of stone could resist indefinitely the pressure of the potencies of the matter. Precisely, the next work of Leto of Tarsus, and men of stone of the offspring of Valentina, would be to find that trace, and shelter themselves, until the days of the final battle. The unique manner to survive in that moment, due to the demons, would seek them around the whole world with increasing efforts while those days be drawing near. According to what the gods warned in their messages, the danger would not be contemptible, due to the persecution would begin in the same moment of the extraction of the wise sword from the secret cavern, and it would be possibly carried out by Bray and Bishop in person. The White Fraternity, assured the Liberator gods, had given fundamental importance to the discovery of America for their future synarchic plans, and they were not disposed to risk them again. When the wise sword be out, at the light of the sun, Yod, the eye of Jehovah Satan, that sees everything, would watch in the act to their carriers, and the White Fraternity would know immediately that there were still lords of Tarsus alive in this world. The reaction of the demons would be foreseeable. They, who had propitiated the discovery, culturally, of America through their agents, the Jew Christopher Columbus, and hundreds of converted Jews at the service of the Gauleans, would make everything possible to stop them, and to steal the stone of Venus. The Circulus Dominicanus, for the excessive zeal exerted to suppress the Jewish and Gauleans' action in Spain and Europe, was strategically surpassed, and neglected the issue of the New World. The order of preachers was infiltrated by hundreds of converted Dominicans, who only ambitioned to go to America, accompanied by thousands of their brothers of race, who were allowed to abandon the prisons in their gloomy ghettos to participate from the conquest. Before this reality, the judgment of the gods suggested to act with extreme caution in all the phases of the operation. How they would go to America? The gods had already predicted it. They will verify. Leto of Tarsus, and one of the Noyos, named Rock, met in talks with Ricardo of Tarsus, and the rest men of stone of the Valentina's family. All were agreeing that the prophecy of the Lord of Venus had been fulfilled, and the yearned moment to leave was closer. To Leto of this corresponded the high honor to transport the wise sword to the disposed side by the gods. But not everyone could leave. Ricardo of Tarsus was old to make a journey like that, and in analogous situation with the other 2 knights and 2 ladies. A younger lady, however, could go with them, but just until some village, because it would have been difficult that she could obtain permission to integrate a military expedition. And apart from the 3 Noyos, 2 domins and friars were in conditions to go as well, who officiated as inquisitors with Ricardo of Tarsus. If all occurred as was expected, the travelers would send to bring those who remained there. Otherwise, they would join to the strategy at the German branch of the family. The problem of the journey, as I said, was easily resolved thanks to the providence of the gods, because a young German explorer, at the service of the Welsh house, was a distant relative of the lords of Tarsus. Nicholas of Taman, indeed, carried the lineage of the Austrian lords of Tharsis, by his matrilineal heritage, and he was in America. The King Charles I, and the German Emperor Charles V, contracted a debt of 150,000 ducats, with the Welsh House of Augsburg signing, as some kind of royal guarantee, a capitulation in Burgos whereby he authorized such bank to establish and exploit a region of America. Such region was composed by the actual territory of Venezuela, from El Cabo de la Vesta to Maracaibo, and the company imposed to itself the obligation to found 2 cities and 3 fortresses, in which they could name a governor with the royal consent. In the year 1527, Juan Empús founded there the city of Villa de Santa Ana de Quera, where Ambrose of Alfainga settled down in 1528, the first governor named by the Welsh, who took with him as lieutenant to Nicholas Fterman. In 1530, after such meeting of Leto of Tharsis with the men of stone, to decide the voyage to America, they discovered through the news, coming from the Brunaldinas branch, the existence of that relative, and they contracted him, through the slow correspondence that the Dominican maintained with the friar missionaries. Was attempted, in any case, to not risk information though that manner, and because of this, the missives were only referred to the necessity of sustaining a personal meeting with the explorer for vital motives that will be clarified then. Something difficult to accomplish in those days, due to, Ferdinand concurred in very dangerous explorations in the heart of the Venezuelan jungle, searching for the gold of the Indians. Anyhow, the lords of Tharsis moved to the port of Seville, and they started to prepare their own expedition, discounting the help of Fterman. In that case, the luck smiled to the lords of Tharsis in 1532, although not to Ambrose of Alfainga, to whom a narrow with Quera sent him to a better life. Because was the death of the governor was what brought Nicholas Fterman to Europe, with the purpose of reclaiming for himself such place that he had won fairly. The Welsh, notwithstanding, gave the charge to Regis Spira, a prestigious man, who counted with countless influences, and powerful friends, naming in compensation to Fterman general of the governor. And was in 1533, when the German was occupied to equip the fleet of the Welsh, all gathered in Seville. Nicholas Fterman was not an initiate nor magic or esotericism connoisseur, but the blood of Tharsis flowed through his veins. Immediately, he understood that the mysterious cause that took his relatives to America had to be supported, and he acceded in all its points to effectuate the plan that they proposed. A secret instinct was telling him that he was not wrong, that something superior to the gold, for which he was disposed to die, guided those adventurers. He could perceive it in the air when he was in their presence. And if that wasn't enough, they also paid with gold, with good Spanish gold, due to his relatives resulted to be very rich. Yes, Nicholas Fterman would risk for the lords of Tharsis. The plan seemed to be simple. 6 of them would have to be transported, 3 were knights, and would be easy to contract. 2 Dominican friars, who already disposed form the ecclesiastic dispensation, and also, for the satisfaction of the Welsh, they were expert miners, and specialists in fine metals, an art highly appreciated in that time, in which was required to melt the uncommon alloys of Indian objects, to rescue the gold and silver that they contained. The lady was the only problem, who would have to wait in Quera for the return of her brothers and uncles, and the lords of this offered to defray the costs of 10 Catalan soldiers, of their own infantry troop, what not represented any inconvenient, due to, in every American expedition, was required of enormous amounts of military effectives. In America, Nicholas would try to orientate them, in the quest of a strange construction of stone, that they ensured that existed to the south. He promptly desisted in such purpose, due to the closed hermetism of the Spaniards. But one thing was sure. They were not interested for the gold, precious stones, or pearls that they could find in such quest. Any object of value would belong to them, because they just wanted to find such place. The first ship, sent by Francisco Pizarro, with a proof of the rescue of Atahualpa, reached to Seville in 5 of September of 1533, and the second, with Hernando Pizarro on board, in 9 of January of 1534. They were transporting 100,000 castellanos, some 450 kilograms, which only constituted a third part of what corresponded to the king. In Peru, Francisco Pizarro had seized, for that time, of 9 tons, 9,000 kilograms of fine gold, and 50,000 kilograms of silver. These facts put in a frenetic state to the avid Welsh, who pretended to obtain similar revenue from their American colony, and they accelerated the departure of Regis-Spira and Nicolas Flamand. At the end of January of 1534, the Guadalquivir of Seville sailed, the fleet that brought to America, Toledo of Tarsus, and the 5 men of stone, who aided him. The lords of Tarsus had provisioned, with abundant food, clothes and military equipment, apart from 20 horses, Spaniard Degas dogs, and 3 dozens of chickens from Castile. 1 week before leaving, Leto of Tarsus retired the wise sword from the secret cavern, covered the stone of Venus with the ribbon O, crossed in the quion, and tying it to his waist, he began the voyage without return to the port of Seville in America. For first time in 1,800 years, since the fall of Tarsus, in hands of the Phoenicians and Gaulenes, the ancient sword of the Iberian kings abandoned the secret cavern. 3 Noyos would guard it, in such uncertain travel, one of them, the most perfect man of stone, that the house of Tarsus would have ever produced. But, would he reach his wisdom to liberate them, from the diabolic powers of Beret and Bishar, who would go immediately in their persecution? Just in the near future, they would ascertain the affirmative answer. When the prow of the frigate of the Welsh entered in the Atlantic Ocean, the men of stone directed the gaze to the coastal light that they were leaving behind. 70 kilometers to the northeast was Onaba, one of the ancient ports of the Tartessian Empire, and also Rosbal, the boulder of Saturn, where Quiblin received the Shekinah. The 6 men were supported over a balustrade of the starboard tack, but their minds were traveling towards Onaba, in the confluence of the rivers Tinta and Odiel. And then, they ascended by the Odiel to Tugs, and they stopped in the citadel of Harshish, now alive again, and powerful in the scenery of the imagination. They saw their ancestors, the Iberian kings, lords of this, sustaining with the commitment of their lives, the guidelines of the Pact of Blood. In solitude, such lineage had faced to everything, and to everyone, to comply with the mission entrusted by the white Atlantean founders, to maintain the loyalty of the liberator gods. A solitude, that is the price for whom are really strangers in the universe, for those who exhibit the intrepidity of Nimrod, and the courage of his Cassets warriors, for whom possess or seek for the blood of Tarsus. The absolute loneliness that the wise warriors must bear in the earth, the Hyperborean initiates, the men of stone, the uncuted spirits, and the mind directed then to the Serochar, before the stone countenance of Pyrene, in the age in which the mystery of the cold fire was officiated freely, and where the chosen ones concurred from all the places of the world to die, or find the naked truth of themselves. The White Fraternity, the Order of Melchizedek, the swarthy Atlantans, the priests of all the cults, the Gaulenes, the Immortals Beret and Bishar, the Templars, the members of the chosen people, the followers of the universal Synarchy, servants of the potencies of the matter, worshippers of Jehovah Satan, terrible enemies of the house of Tarsus. They pursued them for millenniums, caused the destruction of Harshish, and the public disappearance of the mystery of the cold fire, attempting to extinguish the lineage of Tarsus, and hide the Hyperborean wisdom, and they tried by every means to seize from the wise sword, and the stone of Venus. And the mind was floating in the act, to the secret cavern, and appreciated proudly the silent sacrifice of tens of Noyo and Reyes, guarding the wise sword, purifying the blood, and walking with the patience of the hunter, the lithic sign of the Keteba, the racial call, that authorized to go towards the abode of the loyal gods to the spirit of men. Now the Lord of Tarsus could realize the journey yearned since millenniums ago if they wanted to. Anoio, the greatest of all, Leto of Tarsus, had seen the sign, and he knew the secret of the return. But the lords of Tharsis didn't leave yet. They would still wait more time, an instant of the history, until the final battle. Captain Kiev, a lord of Venus, communicated that Neptune, the lord of the war, considered their world as the most real of all the possible worlds. And in that world, in this world, they would contribute to realize the last battle of the essential war. Beside their envoy, the great white chief, the lord of the absolute will and courage. And there were going the lords of Tharsis, towards a megalithic liberated area, by the Hyperborean wisdom of the White Atlantans, a place where they would resist with a wise sword, until the days of the final battle. And the mind was returning, thus, nourished with determination and courage, to the men of stone that were fading away from the Spanish coast, in a frigate from the fleet of the Welsh.